you think Yandy and Mendeecees have an open relationship?
At some point, maybe living in your truth is probably a better option.
When Carlos King, the charismatic host of Reality with the King, prepared to welcome Kirk Frost and Rasheeda, the studio was a flurry of activity. Because Carlos was known for his honest, pure chats, the set's modern, streamlined design and soft lighting provided the perfect intimate atmosphere. Hip-hop and love veterans from Atlanta, the couple entered with the confidence of those who have survived public scandals and came out on top. Rasheeda was sitting in her chair, her braids flowing, her vibrant energy filling the room, and Kirk's eyes swept over the small crowd with a calm, grounded presence. Without hesitation, Carlos plunged straight into the core of their story. Inquiring about their 20-year marriage, he leaned forward and used a gentle yet sharp tone. Uncommon in reality, TV's precarious environment.
Do you feel like Yandy and Mendeecees are trying to come for y'all's spot?
Hey, long story short, me and Rasheeda contract was up in month. That's what really happened.
When discussing candidly the challenges they had faced, Rasheeda, her statements carried the weight of someone who has fought for love amid mistrust and criticism. Kirk, in spite of his reserve, took his prior mistakes seriously and described the slow, systematic process of rebuilding trust. Their experience seemed authentic, and the audience was enthralled with what they said. However, the conversation took an abrupt change of course when Carlos switched. His eyes sparkled mischievously, as if he were a seasoned host who knew how to make things tense without breaking them. In reference to Yandy Smith, the hip-hop superstars Harris and Mendeecees are another couple whose seemingly close connection has been the subject of recent speculations. Rasheeda paused, her expression hardening as it did so. They developed a close bond between her and Yandy. Kirk, meanwhile, shifted in his seat, his mouth tight as if he were bracing himself for what was about to happen following years of triumphs and setbacks. Carlos kept gently encouraging Rasheeda to share what she knew. With a calm but concerned voice, she conceded after a short internal struggle. She spoke of a troubling conversation she had with a close friend who had revealed the details. Of Mendeecees, Rasheeda was wary of gossip because she was loyal to Yandy. But it was to ignore the friend's detailed accounts of late-night adventures, passionate rendezvous, and incriminating texts that had begun to spread among the insiders, including screenshots, Kirk said in a more reserved but equally direct tone. He shared the friendship of Mendeecees. Founded on industry-wide experiences and respect for one another, Kirk, however, pointed out that Mendeecees had recently changed, a conjurer who had never been there before. Kirk tried to challenge the allegations by asking Mendeecees directly if he was okay at home, but he dismissed it as blog nonsense. Devotion kept him from pushing too far, but Kirk's intuition warned him to do otherwise. It was a hushed surprise when Rasheeda made her next statement. Recalling the conversation, her voice grew softer as she explained that she had approached her friend cautiously, not wanting to put her in any more trouble, but also not wanting to catch her off guard. Yandy had responded in an unusually quiet manner. She had replaced her usual caustic dismissal of reports with a hazy acknowledgement that she and Mendeecees were resolving certain problems. The assertion that there was no denial was strong. Rasheeda could hear the grief behind her friend's carefully selected words. The crowd, sitting motionless, absorbed the gravity of the revelation. Carlos waits for the situation to settle before continuing, demonstrating his impeccable timing. Rasheeda thoughtfully responded to his question regarding how Yandy was managing the burden by praising her inner strength as a mother, businesswoman, and champion who built an empire while handling Mendeecees' incarceration and the demands of fame. As Rasheeda knew, however, even the strongest women had their limitations. Rasheeda was worried that if Mendeecees was indeed breaking her trust, Yandy may be almost pushed to the limit. To Carlos's query, Kirk offered his perspective as someone who has been in Mendeecees' shoes before. He spoke about the situation with a voice full of wisdom and expertise. Adultery's consequences. He told the truth about the pain it caused and the effort it required to repair the harm. A guy had to accept full responsibility for his actions if he wanted to protect his family, Kirk believed. No digressions, no justifications. The audience agreed because Kirk was responsible and his remarks were real. Carlos started to think more widely as he felt the rush of emotion. He wanted Rasheeda's view. Right now, she would provide Yandy. She gave a charming, yet fierce response, because they had both had to deal with managing fame and love as women. She talked about maintaining mental health by knowing when to fight and when to back off. Rasheeda felt Yandy deserved to be treated with dignity and integrity, and she was powerful enough to forge her own path if Mendeecees couldn't deliver. As the discussion went on, the audience muttered their approval because the remarks had a profound effect. The tone was softened when Carlos teased Rasheeda about whether she and Yandy would talk about the turmoil on the next season of Love and Hip Hop. The stress was relieved by Rasheeda's warmth when she chuckled. Dismissing the idea quickly, she maintained that some of the interactions were too real for the cameras. She and Yandy had a sacred bond that they would discuss only in secret, away from prying eyes. The Kirk nodded in accord, his nonverbal support demonstrating their united front. Carlos commended Kirk and Rasheeda for being so open and honest as the evening came to a conclusion. Turning to the crowd, he expressed gratitude in his voice and asked them to subscribe and tune in for more uninhibited moments. Kirk and Rasheeda looked at each other as the cameras panned out, and they both silently acknowledged the weight they had just discharged. Studio lighting decreased, but the impact of their words persisted in reaching friends and fans. The podcast was more than simply a gossip session for Rasheeda. It was a chance to stand by a friend and speak truth to power. Kirk was able to tell a cautionary tale and reflect on development. It also acted as a reminder to Yandy that she had support from her network and that she wasn't struggling alone. They were whispering to each other. The story was not yet complete, but under Carlos's deft guidance, a chapter had been presented to the public in all its unadulterated actuality in that studio. Carlos King, the charismatic host of Reality with the King, was getting set to meet Kirk Frost and Rasheeda, and the studio was buzzing with anticipation. The homey atmosphere created by the sleek, modern set and soft lighting was perfect for the kind of pure, unpolished talking about Carlos received accolades for hip-hop artists. The pair adore veterans. They marched into Atlanta as people who had weathered public catastrophes and come out stronger. Rasheeda was sitting in her chair, her braids flowing, her vibrant energy filling the room, and Kirk's eyes swept over the small crowd with a calm, grounded presence. Carlos jumped right to the heart of their story without hesitation. Hanging. Kindly but sharply, he asked about their 20-year marriage, uncommon in the fragile world of reality TV. When discussing candidly the challenges they had faced, Rasheeda, her statements carried the weight of someone who has fought for love amid mistrust and criticism. Kirk, in spite of his reserve, took his prior mistakes seriously and described the slow, systematic process of rebuilding trust. The mob persisted, recognizing the authenticity of their journey in every statement. But the conversation took a surprising turn when Carlos shifted the subject. He was referring to Mendeecees and Yandy Smith Harris, another hip-hop power couple whose alleged close friendship had been the subject of recent rumors. With the mischievousness of a seasoned host who knew how to boil the pot without breaking, his eyes gleamed. The work that Rasheeda, her face tightened as a moment of uncertainty passed across it. Her relationship with Yandy was based on years of successes and failures together. Kirk shifted around in his seat, his jaw clenched as if he was waiting to see what would come next. Carlos convinced Rasheeda to share what she knew in a gentle but firm way. She thought for a while and then gave in. She spoke in a calm yet anxious tone. She gave an account of one disagreeable conversation with a mutual acquaintance who has strong ties to them and who revealed unsettling details about Mendeecees. Rasheeda was wary of gossip since she was loyal to Yandy. But the friends' in-depth accounts of late-night adventures, passionate rendezvous, and incriminating texts that had begun to circulate among insiders including screenshots, made it clear unrejectable Kirk spoke in a tone that was more reserved but not any less direct.